Hi, I'm C.C. Péan, and this is Reclaiming Your Health.
Hello and welcome to Reclaiming Your Health. I am your host, C.C. Péan, and welcome to my kitchen. So happy to have you all here with me this week. I feel like I've been cooking, the last few classes we've had, I've been cooking like super comfort type food. And I don't know if it's because of what's going on in the world, but there is a way, typically when you fix comfort food, it's like full of fat and it's full of like, stuff that's just not good for your body. Well, I have created a dish that is so luscious and so comforting, but we're not using dairy. We're using plant-based cream. We're using plant-based cheese. And so it doesn't affect your body the way that dairy-based stuff does. But it's so delicious. And what's even better is it's super simple and it's super fast. What is this dish, you might ask? It is one of my favorite types of pasta in the world. Gnocchi. Gnocchi, they're like little pillows of happiness. I don't know what's going on with my nose today. It's itching me. They're like little pillows of happiness. They're just like the perfect carb bite. And the great thing about gnocchi is there's so many different variations out there now. There's the plain potato, which we're doing today. There's also a sweet potato gnocchi. I've seen a kale gnocchi at Trader Joe's. So the dish that we're making today, whatever gnocchi you get in your hands, you can make it. But this is my favorite. This is like my little indulgent dish that I make from time to time. So the key ingredient in this is our gnocchi, and I'm using mini gnocchi. You can use mini, you can use regular size, it doesn't matter. This is what was available at my grocer, and so that's why I'm using this. We're also going to use some ripple, half and half, okay? We're using the half and half, we're not using creamer. Be careful when you pick it up because the creamer has sweetness to it, and we want to mimic the flavor of real half and half heavy cream. So we don't want any sweetness to it. So that's why we're using this one. We're also going to be using some fresh broccoli. We're going to be using two types of tomato. Sun-dried tomato, which I love. It has a really rich, deep flavor to it. And then we're going to use some grape tomatoes as well. I love the brightness of these tomatoes. So we're going to offset the deepness with some brightness, and all the while getting a healthy dose of lycopene in our system. We're going to use some onion and some garlic. Here we have some plant-based mozzarella that is by BioLife. And I love this cheese specifically for cheese sauces because it's made from coconut oil or with coconut oil, and so it melts beautifully. Now, don't worry, if you don't like the taste of coconut, no need to fear. You don't taste it, but it uses the oil from coconut and it melts beautifully. So that's why I like to use it. If you don't want to use this, you can use another type of vegan cheese or plant-based cheese, that's fine. We're going to use a little bit of lemon zest for brightness. To add to that cheesy flavor, I'm just going to use a little bit of nutritional yeast. We've got some Italian seasoning here, some regular salt, and we're going to use just a little bit of avocado oil to do our sauteing. So the great thing about gnocchi is it cooks incredibly fast. So what I like to do is I like to get my water going so that when I finish my sauce, I can just take that gnocchi out of the water, drain it, and throw it right in there. It literally takes at the most 2 minutes to boil. Because it's already cooked, you're just kind of warming it through. There's so many different ways to do it. You can even like pan fry your gnocchi if you want to, but I'm going to use the boiled way because I just love it. I just love it. So the first thing we're going to do, as I told you, we've got our water going. I add a little bit of salt to the water, but you don't have to. Traditional pasta cooking and blanching for vegetables, they typically tell you that your water should taste like the sea. But we're not doing that because we're trying to be careful with our sodium intake. So I use just a pinch of water. And a lot of times what I do to kind of bump up the flavor of my pastas is I put fresh herbs in it. So sometimes I'll take a sprig of rosemary and just throw it in that water and let it come to a boil. I'll throw some thyme in there, let it come to a boil. Sometimes I'll even take half of an onion and I won't cut the stem off so it stays intact, but I'll put that in the water. And what it does is it infuses flavor into your pasta, whole nother level. So try that. Let me know what you think. Season your water. We have talked about this numerous times over the however many classes I've done about building layers of flavor. Why do we do that? We do that so we don't have to use a lot of salt. We do that so that the finishing touch is salt, but that's not a major component. Salt is something that we really have got to manage. It's just as important of managing as is our fat, as our carbohydrates, all of those things. Salt is a silent killer, particularly in communities of color. So that is why I encourage you all to build layers of flavor with things like onions and garlic and fresh herbs and things like that, so you don't need a lot of salt. Okay, so our water is going. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get started on our cheese sauce, like a bechamel. Very, very simple cheese sauce. Those of you who have been rocking with us for some time saw me make a similar sauce when I made the macaroni and cheese. Today, we're going to kind of have a different approach to it because we've got all these great veggies that are going to go in. It's not just the sauce. So let's get started. So I talked about we're using sun-dried tomatoes as well as fresh tomatoes. We're using onions and we're using garlic. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up my onion because we're using the dried tomatoes as well as the fresh tomatoes, but we want to cook them down a little bit. We want to cook our fresh tomatoes down a little bit. We don't want them super juicy. So depending on how you like your onions, I love onion. Some people like the flavor of onion, but they don't necessarily like the texture of it. So depending on where you fall in the spectrum, you may want to cut up your onions very fine, or you can do slices of them. I'm kind of doing a mince of my onion. So that's enough onion, and I've got my garlic here. And I'm going to use my super handy press that I love. I have a couple different tools that I use for my garlic. This is what I call my knuckle garlic press. Look at this. I love it. Look at that. This comes to the front camera. Look at that. It gives me just like a great amount of garlic. And I just use my spoon, my knife end, and I get it all in the pan. All right. So I'm just going to add a little bit of oil to my pan. So we've got these two things ready to go. Now I'm going to cut up some of my tomato, and I'm just going to cut this in half. This is super easy. This is not like a complicated dish at all. I'm basically going to throw everything in here, let it kind of like cook down. The broccoli is going to be blanched in the same water that we're using for our gnocchi, because we still want it to be bright and crisp and have a nice texture to it. I don't like overcooked veggies. I talk about texture so much. All right, so we're done with that. All right. So literally, I'm going to take this whole thing and just drop it in my pan. And you can already hear it sizzling. You know, gnocchi is something also that is very easy to make. I made it in culinary school. I haven't made it since because it's even easier to buy it. But as we have talked about monitoring what you put into your body, it's a great thing to try to make. I would encourage you all to try it out for yourself. I'm gonna let these tomatoes cook for a little bit. Now, of course, I like to cook my tomatoes down. You don't have to. If you like them juicier, you know, you can make this dish work for you. I think I kind of cooked down tomatoes a little more because of my brother. My brother, growing up, my mom would cook the tomatoes. And I remember he always hated the tomatoes that would like explode in your mouth. So maybe that's where I got this from. Turn this up a little bit, get this going. So as you all may or may not know, if you've been watching for some time, you know that I have been spending quite a bit of time in New Orleans. And I came back right before Ida hit, and I'm going back to work tomorrow. So hopefully we will see each other again over the next few weeks. All right, so this is cooked down a little bit. So now I'm going to take my sun-dried tomatoes, and I have about a 1/4 cup of sun-dried tomatoes. Now these tomatoes are the ones that are packed in oil with herbs. You don't have to use those. But if you are using them, just be mindful of that when you're looking at your oil content and your fat content, because there is going to be a little bit of oil added for that. So if you're somebody who is watching your oil content, factor that in. And this gnocchi that we're making is about 4 servings, okay? So we're looking at about 2 tablespoons of oil, I would say total, including the sun-dried tomato oil. So I like to think about things like that. So if it's like 15 grams of fat per tablespoon, we've got about 30 grams of fat, and we've got 4 servings. So the fat, we're getting about 7 grams of fat from our oil per serving. Okay, that's not including the fat that we're going to have from our vegan cream or from our vegan cheese. But those are low in fat, much lower than you would have if you were using traditional dairy. Okay, so this is looking and smelling good. What I'm going to do now, so we've got our plant-based cream. I'm going to pour in about 1.5 cups. Now, it depends. We've talked about this too. Some people love a lot of sauce. Some people don't. I like it saucy. So now that's in there, and we're going to let this kind of warm through. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of my Italian seasonings, dried Italian seasonings. You can always obviously use fresh Italian seasoning if you want to, which would be rosemary and things like that, oregano. I'm going to add some of my nutritional yeast to this. And known in the plant-based world as nooch. I'm adding some nooch to it. And I want this to come up to a slight boil, which I'm seeing. And if you can see that from the side camera, can you see that it's coming to a boil? And once I start to see a lot of movement here, that's when I'm going to add my plant-based mozzarella and let that break down and become part of the cheese sauce. Now, I'm using mozzarella. I've made this with vegan smoked Gouda. I've made this with vegan provolone. Vegan parm works as well too. You just want some kind of cheese component. So we're seeing this start to bubble up now. Can we go to our side? Can you see that on the side? I think you can. It's starting to bubble up now. So I'm going to take this, and this is about a cup of plant-based cheese that I'm just going to sprinkle through here. I've even used sliced vegan cheese. So it really doesn't matter as long as it is some type of vegan cheese that melts. And a lot of the cheeses now, they'll have that on their packaging. It'll say melts very easily. So you want that. You know, vegan cheese has come a long way. I remember, you know, a few years ago when I went to culinary school, people would say, what's the best vegan cheese to get? And I would always say, first of all, just get it out of your head that it's going to taste like cheese, because it's not. You know, don't disappoint yourselves. But in the past few years, they have made such great advances with regards to plant-based cheese. And there's some really good ones out there. And Violife, they are one of my favorites. All right, so this is starting to, I don't know if you can see this, folks. This is starting to really thicken up. This is looking really good. So we're almost done with our dish. This also, you know, this is kind of like an Alfredo, I would say. We've got a little bit of that in here. Okay, so I'm going to drop this down because it's really done what I want it to do. And I'm going to put some lemon zest in it because I love the brightness that lemon zest adds. That should be plenty. I'm just going to mix this through. Ooh, this is looking good. So now what we're going to do, watch this. Let's get this water. We're actually going to, this is looking great. Let me just grab a spoon. I have not added any salts to this. That's another. Add the equivalent of a teaspoon of salt to that. Mix it through. Got a new spoon here, even though it's me eating this. That did it. You know what's also good in creamy sauces? Just a touch of nutmeg. That always takes it to the next level. Love that. All right, so our water is going. I really want to get this to a slow boil. This gnocchi does not take much at all. Literally, once it hits the water, you've got like 1 to 2 minutes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blanch this broccoli in this hot water. Just going to drop it in there, and I'm just going to use a slotted spoon to take it out. Literally just taking a little bit of that, you know, rawness off of it. But we don't want it soft by any means. Don't want it soft by any means. You can even put the gnocchi and the broccoli in at the same time. Okay. So I'm just going to take that out, put it in back in my bowl. Some people, when they do this, what they would do is immediately put this in like iced water to stop the cooking, but we're moving so quickly, there's no need to do that with this. Okay. It's nice and beautiful and bright, if you can see that. A great color. Don't ever want our broccoli looking just like super overcooked and dull in color. This is the way we want it. All right, so that is done. And now we're going to take our gnocchi and drop it into this boiling water. And once you start to see them float to the top, that's when you know that your gnocchi is done. So we're just going to be patient here. Just kind of stir it just a little bit. But we want the hot water to do its thing and let them float to the top. Once that's done, we are ready to rumble. Let's move some things out the way. Clean up a little bit. I got this gnocchi at my local Publix. I got 2 of these for $4. So, you know, sometimes we talk about the inexpensive meals. This is a really inexpensive meal. So if you bought 2 of these, that's $4. A handful of cheese, which is probably about like a half of the package of beef cheese, and say that's $3.99. So we're looking at a main dish for like 3 people or a side dish for about 6 people, coming in at about $10. Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay. We've got about a minute more here for this. You know, I would love to know what types of dishes you all would like to learn to make. I noticed that you all, like me, like comfort dishes. So last week we made the pad thai, and I've seen about 4 or 5 people that made it, and they did an incredible job. It looked delicious. And some people even added that extra cabbage that I talked about at the end that adds to the crunchiness, along with the bean sprouts. It adds the crunchiness, it adds color. It's such a beautiful dish. And I cannot tell you how many times I have ordered pad thai. When I learned how to make it, I realized it was not complicated. I know exactly what I'm putting in my body, and it's inexpensive. I love learning things like that, which I'm sure you do as well. Okay. So our gnocchi is coming to the, it's rising to the top. And I've got my strainer here, and you're going to see how quickly this all comes together. Our sauce is already done. Our broccoli is ready to go. Just going to drain our gnocchi real quick. Yep, they're popping up. They're rising to the top. There we go. So as soon as you see them start to hit the surface, those bad boys are ready to go. I wish you could see this, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because all of a sudden, they'll just start to come to the top. And that's when you need to drain them. Because if you don't, they'll get super mushy. They start to break down. So I'm going to take this pot. I'm going to pour it. All right. And now you all are going to see how easily this dish comes together. Let me move this over a bit so that it is in. Yeah, you all can see it all now. So we've got our cream sauce that has delicious sun-dried tomatoes and fresh tomatoes in it. We've got some vegan mozzarella. We've got some vegan half and half, a little bit of nutritional yeast, some lemon zest. Now we're gonna do this. We've got our freshly boiled gnocchi. We're just gonna drop it right in there. We're gonna mix this up. This looks so luscious and yummy. That looks good. And now we're going to take our broccoli and just drop that in there as well. And again, you all saw we used a small amount of salt for this. If you want to add, let your guests or your family add their own salt to this, that's what I would suggest. Let the flavors speak for themselves. One of the things I've touched on, I don't think I've said it recently, but one of the things I've touched on is that, you really can retrain your palate. You can. So if you have been used to eating super salted or overly sweet things, it really does not take much for you to retrain your palate and fall in love with eating things closer to its natural state. Let me grab a spoon. And we are ready to plate. Look at this yummy deliciousness. I'm going to put this right. You know what? I'm going to use a different bowl. Bear with me for just a moment because I want you all to see the beauty of this dish. Here we go. This is my favorite. I think I put everything in this bowl. This is going to go right in the center. Ooh, this looks so good. Are you folks still with me? Nice and yummy and creamy. I'm just going to put a few more tomatoes here. Broccoli on top. Ooh, that looks so good. I've got some minced chives. I'm just going to drop on top here. So I spoke about adding a little bit of nutmeg, and I grabbed some, and I always suggest using fresh nutmeg. I like to buy the fresh nutmeg and grate it as I need it because it has such a fresh, beautiful fragrance. I'm just going to use my microplane and just a little bit over the top, and then I'm just going to mix it in, and then we're going to plate this bad boy up. Love, love, love fresh nutmeg, love fresh lemon zest. These things, people, are the things that you add to dishes that just take it to the next level. Look at how luscious this looks. Are you seeing that? Oh. So we've got the perfect bowl because everything's going to stand out in this bowl. It's my favorite bowl to use. And I've got this these creamy pillows of happiness that are called gnocchi. We've got our fresh tomato. We've got sun-dried tomato. We've got some nice, crisp broccoli. We've got everything. Oh, that looks so good. And I'm just going to use a little bit of some chopped chives I have. You could also use parsley if you wanted to. Oh, this looks so good. And it smells divine. So ladies and gentlemen, here is our delicious gnocchi with a creamy sauce that has sun-dried tomatoes and fresh tomatoes, garlic, onions. We've got beautiful broccoli florets in there. We've got some fresh, beautiful, bright lemon zest. We've got some nutmeg, some spicy nutmeg, and it all comes together in a beautiful mouthful of food. And this was done in under 30 minutes. Remember, the gnocchi takes at the max 3 minutes to boil. So you're working on your sauce, which is probably going to take you about 10 minutes, depending on what you put in it. Right when that sauce is done, you throw those veggies in that water, blanch them, take them out. Throw that gnocchi in the water, 3 minutes, take it out, drain it, and throw it in that sauce. Toss it all together and get ready for a delicious meal. Now, this sauce that I put together, of course, you could use it on traditional pasta as well. You could use it on spaghetti. You could use it on penne, bow tie pasta. But I'm telling you, there is something about these beautiful little pillows of potatoes called gnocchi. Divine, delicious. Thank you for joining me on Reclaiming Your Health. We'll see you again next week. Oh, and take pictures. I love seeing your pictures. I love seeing what you all do with the recipes I share. You put your little twist on it. I love, love, love it. So please take pictures and share them with me. See you next week. Bye-bye.